everybody. Welcome back to the Imris Saga Rising Shadows. We are now on chapter 4. This will be the first session of our return. We've already been chatting for an hour and a half or so, but I will ask anyways, how is everybody doing today?
I am good. I found it really hard to not immediately start hosting when you started doing the countdown. Because it's been so long since I wasn't doing that.
My hair reflects my mood almost perfectly.
Wild and untamed.
Clean, but also damp somehow.
Okay. Sure.
Neither of those words are okay for mood descriptors.
I feel as if I'm like a little cartoon man who's just been rained on and a sad slide whistle has happened, but I've walked into a warm room full of pie that has me enchanted and floating into the air towards it.
So following your nose, right? Like your nose is leading your cartoon man
Yeah,
across the...
I see it and my nose extends like Pinocchio style.
Got it.
Okay. Understood.
I've used all my good rolls for the night.
I'm just happy that Marissa had the exact same bad thought that I had. That's really what I'm just grateful for in this moment.
Immediate chaos. Immediate chaos. This is what happened.
You opened the floor, motherfucker. You asked how we're doing.
That's why I do.
It's on you.
That was your first mistake.
If I didn't want the chaos, I wouldn't say anything. Let's be real.
Look, I've dealt with so many euphemisms at this point, I invite them.
But thanks to everybody for coming back. I'm excited to get back into it. I know it's only been what, a month and a half, but it feels like it's been a real long time.
Yeah,
It's been almost 2 months, really.
Yeah, it's been longer than that.
It's been longer for me too.
Oh
I've
yeah,
missed
because
you all.
Charlie missed a couple. So
Yeah, since we were all together, it's been forever. I don't know that we've ever played with all of us on one
sure
session.
that
We've never
happened once.
all of us ever. I think.
I've never even met Charlie. Like,
That's true. Yes,
It's our first meeting.
In this call right now.
Okay. Let's go ahead and so it has been 1 year and 1 day since last the party had gathered all together as one group. Today is the day that you are scheduled, maybe fated, one might say, to all meet back up again at Uba's manor, their castle, Mayorath. Uba, what have you done to prepare for your companions' gathering on this day? By this point in time, it is in the mid-afternoon. You're expecting that one of them should arrive really at any moment. It is a warm, late summer, almost autumn day, and some storm clouds are rolling across the desert sky.
I think that Uba has been spending the past couple weeks, like, not being rude, but kind of hustling the servants around trying to get everything ready, because this will be the first time that this castle has been, repaired, looking nice, no more cracks in the walls, there's no sand on the floor. So they're trying to make it look as spiffy as possible, while also probably helping the least compared to all the servants. And I think that they've probably put up some like little decorations and stuff too, kind of making it look like a festival. Not a festival, but just very nicely decorated. And there's also a big sign on the door that says something to the effects of closed, complaints will be heard tomorrow by Lord Uba, so that there's no one in the castle except for the servants.
Specifically complaints.
Probably considers that to be an offense or like quite rude or like, something a lord shouldn't do. But most lords just don't hear complaints until they want to,
Yeah.
And where are you waiting? Are you like on your throne room? Are you pacing about?
I think Upa, after hustling the servants a little bit more, is standing down by the the teleportation circle near the oasis and is waiting for people down there to kind of lead them up to the castle. But they're trying to be a little bit inconspicuous so people don't come up and start bothering them.
Okay. So you maybe like have like your cloak up and stuff.
Yeah, the hood on the cloak is up.
All right. Alvaro, you are. How are you arriving? Did you pay to get teleported here? Are you taking carriage or horse up from the nearest fort?
I like the idea of repeating from before with paying a small price to ride up with whoever the mail delivery person is. What's the word I'm looking for? The
Courier?
post, yeah, the courier, the post person, and riding up with them again, and just catching that ride up and having kind of a slower arrival up from port in order to get my land legs back under me.
Okay. So you've been, you landed sometime in the morning, and now you've been traveling for, a couple hours. So it's getting towards by this point in time. The courier, which you are currently traveling with, they don't have a carriage so much as a cart stacked with some letters and other various goods that they're kind of taking further inland. And you've never met them before, but it is somewhat older in appearance Elcar woman, meaning that she's far older than you are, although she's certainly not like Melf. But she kind of looks back at you and says in common, "So what brings a human traveler up these ways?"
I am old friends of Lord Uba, and I've just finished my final sale as an initiate in the Church of Semillus, and this is an opportunity of celebration and a chance to meet an old friend as a new man.
Many interesting things about the place. You seem only to confirm them.
Well, I must tell you, as a sailor, I'm a horrible gossip monger, so if you have anything you wish to share, I have ready ears, and I'll reach into a satchel and pull out a small flask of rum and just offer it as just kind of as we're traveling along, if you're interested. Perhaps I could
Sure.
buy a bit of a story from you.
They'll pretty happily, with no persuasion necessary, take that and have a swig before passing it back to you, saying, "Well, it seems that you perhaps know them better than I, but I have heard that they are a effective ruler. Though not everyone is happy with their decisions, they make them decisively. They are good at putting feuds to bed, though not all parties are happy at times. I've also heard that they are wealthy, wealthy beyond the measure of these lands typically. They have paid for many new projects, and they call to adventurers, as you might.
I'll take a long sip and say, everything you have heard seems well in character with a hero that I know.
They also spend a lot of time at bars, or at least the one bar.
With that, Alvaron gives a deep laugh and produces a second, smaller flask for the courier and hands it to them and just, on that, my friend, I think we shall pass no judgment and take a long drink together and continue along.
What, as you are kind of riding down, I think they've invited you up to the driver's seat next to them at this point, whereas before you were kind of in the back with their cargo. What does Alvaron look like Like, what are they wearing? Have they changed anything about themselves since we've last seen them?
So when Alvaron was becoming an initiate, they had shaved their head, they'd shaved their beard, and they wore the the armor of the Sea King. And the armor hasn't changed, though I like to think that a more conscientious observer might notice that there are more seashells, that there are more affectations to it at this point. And it's almost as if like it's grown along with Alvaron's confidence. And as Alvaron has kind of become more set into this life and who he is, both as a sailor, as a leader, and as a warrior and sorcerer, there's kind of a pattern that emerges within the seashells that is more bespoke of the arcane than previously you would have seen. Originally, yes, it looked like a barnacle encrusted set of armor, but now it begins to take shape. Now it begins to take form. He is still characteristically bald, though now there is a cropped sort of beard about his face. It's not gotten to the point of wildness yet. It hasn't gotten to the point of overgrowth. But there is definitely I have been shaving my head, but I've been allowing this to grow since my last voyage type vibe to his face. And there's the new confidence to him. There's a new sort of self-awareness to Alvaron, and it carries over into how he acts and how he treats, but also how he listens. And that bearing is more obvious. He's also picked up the somewhat annoying habit of quoting scripture. And you don't even know it's scripture because most people haven't read any of the works of the Church of Semillus. But if you hear anything about waves and tides and storms and everything else, you're like, God damn it, of course he's quoting this again. Listen. But yeah, that is the new Alvaron. Still bald, but with a fiery expression, a greater confidence, and a little bit of a beard that's grown in from his last voyage.
I think we kind of pull out of this scene of the cart trundling down an otherwise lonely road. Again, we see these clouds kind of rolling in, hinting at a thunderstorm on the horizon. And we cut to Medea. How are you traveling to Uba's castle? Are you taking a teleportation circle, or are you going by other means of transportation? You're muted. First one, guys.
Okay. I think Medea thinks really long and hard about taking that mode of transportation, but I think they take the teleportation circle for two reasons. The first one is that I think they're a little bit overgenerous, and someone needs to borrow it for something, and they have a hard time saying no to that. And the second one is that it feels a little bit ostentatious almost. They show up in simple plain clothes. They've got their big jacket on them, as always. Got their spears hidden in the quiver. They've got their helmets stowed away in the bag. They look about as casual as they possibly can. Their hair is a little bit more frayed, and on their face is a few more scars on their cheek and one across the forehead, but none of them are too major. They seem a little more anxious and jittery than they normally are, though their attitude about the world hasn't changed all that much. I think they're probably a little bit more expressive. Their stance is much more wide open. When they do walk through the circle and they come through the doors, instead of normally putting their hands first, they've started to put their feet first when they go through places.
So you are taking the circle?
Yeah.
So I think in that case, we see you kind of cut over. So you're kind of walking in through to the other side of the circle where you're teleporting
Mhm.
from. Do you bring anybody with you?
I think Medea specifically doesn't. This is supposed to be a reunion between old friends. He hasn't really told his order where he's going besides meeting or a meeting. There's a privacy to it.
But you then see what seems to be your first arrival at around midday, almost exactly. The runes of the teleportation circle begin to glow, as you well know now, hinting at somebody about to arrive to step through the space between and here. There's a moment of anticipation when you're not really sure who it's going to be, and you're kind of excited to see which of your companions it might be before Medea begins to materialize in a moment, and the two of you very quickly lock eyes with one another.
Medea doesn't bound, but they do walk towards Uba and pick and grab them in a hug and almost pick them up in the air a little bit. And they say, "It has been too long. I've not
I
seen your
think
face."
I think that Uba has missed you enough that they don't complain that their feet have left the ground. So they just hug you back really tightly and say, "It's so good to see you." And I think at the same time, Kojin comes up and like nuzzles your shoulder, I guess. That's their height now. So there's a very large drake that's snuggling you as well.
Ah, I see they've grown too.
Uba nods. This is just a bit, and when you put Uba back down, Uba is like half the size of Kojin, at least.
Ah,
Uba, I
I
need.
didn't think they'd
Okay.
grow so fast.
What was that,
They
Andrew?
grew.
No,
Oh no, you go. You go.
you can go.
I just say they grew up so fast. I hope you've kept an album or sketches.
Uba laughs and says, "I'm not one for an artist, but I have had a few done, and I'm sure that when you go into the castle, you'll see them." And they're going to be a couple. It's like someone that like commissioned fancy art of their cat, but it's Kojin instead.
Hmm. They said so. Have any of the others arrived, or I am the first, or?
Uba shakes their head and says, "No, you're the first. If you'd prefer, I can take you up to the castle, or we can wait here for a bit and talk while we wait for the others."
I'm happy to just wait here and talk. It's easier that way.
Okay. And Uba maybe gestures. There's probably like, kind of like a shallow ball or something like around the circle that you can sit on.
Medea taps their foot with like the heavy iron boot anxiously for a second before hearing the clanging it's making and stops. And 30 seconds later, they do it again and have to stop themselves again. They say, "How have your affairs gone? Have things gone well, or disaster struck, lightning come down and revived someone?"
Uh, Uba kind of rolls their eyes and says, not much has changed since the last time I've seen you. Spent my days answering complaints, walking around this area, mostly spending my time here. It's been interesting, and I've also had some adventurers coming back and forth between the castle and their various adventures. It's been interesting, but I do kind of miss going on them myself. How about you? How's your order?
It's gone better than I would have hoped. There have been issues and there have been catches, and in the end, not many of them are much for lifting a heavy blade, but they've all found a place. It's nice to see. There are days I find myself the only one wearing armor in the group, which is weird, but you know how it is.
Uba nods and says, "I understand," and kind of looks back towards the castle, and there's like maybe some guards there, but they're not really wearing armor. They're just wearing like fine clothes and have like spears and stuff.
Your castle is significantly more clean than I last remember it. Looks like a
It's
castle
taken
now fit for
months.
you. I assume you just found it like this one day.
I think Uba like thinks for a second and says, to be quite honest, it was difficult work. It seemed like no one had really been here for decades. But I think we've done some good work here. I hope you enjoy it.
It's gorgeous, of course. I'd love to talk more, but we should probably save most of our respite and conversation for when the others arrive.
Of course. And Uba sits on the little wall.
Sulfur feels about people repeating themselves.
Uba, while we're still on you, you've said you've dressed inconspicuously. Do you have any kind of like marks of office that you've taken on? Do you wear like a circlet or have any kind of scepter or anything like that?
I'm trying to remember. I think I gave the servants a mark of like being the servants, but I don't think Uba does. I'll say that they're wearing in their collection of necklaces, they're wearing like a trying to think of a blue gem, like an aquamarine maybe necklace. That's kind of their symbol. They don't like crowns, but they like necklaces, so it kind of matches like the turquoise waters.
So we kind of maybe see a bit of that glinting beneath all the other clothes. As the two of you now very clearly spy a cart trundling down the road to make its way up. Before they get to you, Sylvarin, how are you choosing to travel to party or gather?
I think that given what we discussed before the session, rather than though there was a teleportation circle fairly close to where he was most recently, Silverin has instead just chosen to travel with the most recent trading caravan that is bringing goods to Uba's hold.
Okay, so you're kind of traveling along with them. Who, if anybody, have you brought actually with you?
He has brought, I think perhaps the traders from the most recent village he's journeyed with, as well as Maribeth. And I feel like we're going to change that name right now because I hear Maribeth every time you say it over stream. I can't.
It's Maraveth, right?
Yeah, there we go. I'll say Maribeth more clearly then. So, yeah.
Okay. And as you're traveling on with this caravan, what do we see you looking like? Anything has significantly changed?
So Silverin still wears the mithril armor that he finally donned after much gnashing of teeth and despair. Next to him, though, the bone armor that he once wore on their first treks has been like much sized down. Bones have been removed. Places have been stitched together, brought together with little leather straps to make it fit the much frailer body of his companion, who limps along beside him. Silverin, as he travels through the desert, is mostly covered by the gray shawl that he was given by Medea. And while his face is still clean shaven, his hair has just continued growing out. And now there are many little braids worked into it, a few with the sort of trading beads that are common in Gathite tribes that are going from place to place. Some of the beads are quite expensive, but many are just a little cheaper, little markers of intended trades and debts. So a few of those occasionally swing out from under the shawl, and he tucks them back in as he makes his way across the desert. He still looks just generally displeased with the heat, takes extra swigs of his water barrel, but he is no longer collapsing at this kind of journey.
So the two of you who have already arrived, looking out from the teleportation circle, can see now a caravan in the distance, slowly approaching from one direction, and almost in the opposite direction, the lonely cart making its way closer and closer. And you think, by some fortuitous coincidence, that they're going to arrive at roughly the same time. And indeed, they do. Arriving kind of near to the teleportation circle, as it's roughly center placed near the market. The two of you can see Silverin and Alvaron both kind of hopping off of these wagons or carts that they've been riding. And likewise, the two of you see already sitting down, having met Uba and Medea. Who approaches first?
I mean, honestly, I'm probably dismounting from the carriage, very quickly stowing the rum, forgetting the rum that the actual courier has, having that pause for a second, just going like, no, you keep it. Consider it tip. And then rushing forward and bowing deeply before Lord Uba, of course. So sanctimonious and like bowing deep enough that probably Uba has, if they have any desire, has the ability to cuff Alvaron on the head
Yeah, they definitely do that.
before coming up and sweeping into a hug and moving on to Silverin for just the same. And there's probably more of a physicality to Alvaron than you're normally used to, but it feels natural in a way.
They give a great big tight hug as well. Try and squeeze the seawater out of him a little bit.
There's a little bit of sweat definitely on him, and just there's kind of a probably as you meet Alvaron's eyes, there's more of a glint of steel.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a hostile way, just in there's a little bit more iron there than there was before.
Mm-hmm. A little bit more solid footing.
Yes.
As Silverin approaches, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and that is completely overridden by the joy that Alvaron has to see you. And please, as you were, Charlie.
Silverin, as he approaches, brings down the shawl and just immediately like pulls Alvaron into that hug, and grabs Medea as well. But once he's let go of them, he's seen Uba fairly often, and he looks over his shoulder at Maraveth, and he indicates to Uba, and then, just like Alvaron did, a very deep, not quite mocking bow. Sometime after the time that he just resurrected two people right before he went into a fight, on Uba's not quite order. There seems to be like something sincere to that bow. But then he rises up before he can get struck.
I think Uba just like sighs and says such formality, and then pauses and says Kojin, as Kojin is actively like sniffing Alvaron's pack to see if Alvaron brought any treats for them. And probably Kojin looks a little bashful, but is still near the pack.
Alvaron, you notice easily that Silverin smells like salt water. There is a faint crust of sea grime, just in the places where his armor, he's cleaned his armor up, but just on the like hem of his cloak at the bottom, there's a faint white scrim. And despite the fact that he is well dry, that's just like a scent that doesn't quite leave you.
I think if that's the case, while Alvaron digs into his pack real quick and pulls out a little bundle of dried meats and flicks them out to Kovu, just looking out and just looking at you, goes, Well, you smell like a new home. What brought you out of your mountains, friend?
Hardly a new home. But a pleasant diversion. He once more glances back to Marveth to see if he's gotten any closer, and then says, gesturing at the caravan behind him, "Trade."
Hmm.
I think Marveth is kind of hanging back, and unless you gesture for him to come forward.
Silverin watches him for a moment, but then just lets him remain.
It suits you. Salt does everyone a little bit of good, but for those of true heart, it does a great amount. And then with that, just dropping all pretense and also whatever little bit of food he has, just goes in for the hug and wraps you up.
Silverin just hugs back very earnestly, and kind of leans back and studies the beard for a moment, and then hugs him again. I see you have decided to change the location of your hair.
Alvaron has a moment of pure confusion. Oh, yes, it's easier for me to measure how long I've been ashore or at sea this way than with a regular calendar. I'll be shaving tonight and back to my regular shorn self until we set out again.
At first, I didn't recognize you with it.
I know, right? Where did the streaks of red come from? That's weird, right? There's no red up here, but then with this, woo.
I'm glad to see we're all still alive.
Silverin looks at Medea and nods, but then just slowly rotates, looking towards the teleportation circle and around the keep.
I shouldn't hedge my bets yet, but has anybody heard from Will or?
You all kind of glance at each other, maybe waiting for somebody else to say something, but no, none of you. Nobody says anything to.
Silver, have you sent messages to them? I know you do have that ability.
Silverin would have periodically messaged, but whether or not he received replies.
Will's been available for the last month, I think. So if you sent one in that time, it would have been yeah, hi, I'm alive. Everything is fine and good.
Yeah, I think that Silverin just has a habit of dropping a message every few weeks, so it's possible that was opened up at that time. Because the last time that they spoke, it was essentially, "I will be very difficult to contact," right?
Also, if you weren't casting sending, you didn't get a response.
Yeah.
Only sending would have got a response because of reasons.
Yeah. No, I think that based on what we said before about this, there might have been a confirmation. If you're all right with that. Otherwise, his window just was right before Will became available.
No, in the last month, she would have just responded yes, looking forward to coming back together.
So yeah, Silverin watches the others and then just nods. She's well. Or responding.
Do you know if she intends to attend this, or normally she would be punctual? I'd assume at least send a message if they were going to be late.
I would hardly consider a meeting in a keep to have a precise time. I will contact her.
Hmm.
And he looks to Uba, and just gestures back at the caravan. There should be more there for feasting, if you would like. I should see to my rooms and ensure that Bailey does not lecture me for my appearance.
You all are having this conversation and maybe getting ready to part ways. I'm going to make an assumption here. The teleportation circle begins to glow
Yes.
once more.
I was like, are you just waiting for me to decide when that happens? So the teleportation circle begins to glow, really the same way that it did for anybody else, but you see kind of a haze of greenish mist begin to form in the center, and then you see the sigil drawn again, the perfect replication of your sigil, drawn again, and this form in the middle of the haze morphs into a woman in a dress that then morphs into a fully realized medium height young woman as she completes the circle as if in front of you, and then a shimmering portal spins into existence above her, still tinged in this green hazy tint, and then the portal drops, and in front of you all signs of the glowing magic are gone, and a tall-ish, she's 5'5", young woman with raven black hair, olive skin, wearing a green dress that goes down to her ankles, holding a spell book that she clasps closed in her left hand. Kind of looks around. You notice that on her dress she has a belt that's kind of cinching her dress closed, and on it there's a rapier, and on the other hip there's a familiar-looking bag of holding that seems that it could talk to you if it had really been given permission to. And she kind of looks around for a moment, and then her eyes widen very noticeably as she sees the four of you, and she like half runs and half skips forward before kind of stopping in front of Uber in particular and smiling, this massive smile, and saying, "Uber, it's been so long since I've seen you." That's not the voice at all. I'll find it. We'll get there sometime.
Is she recognizable? Should I make a roll for that?
Theoretically recognizable. Genetically, she remains.
I think you should all make a perception or insight.
Okay.
Because it is unexpected that they would look like this. Although
literally all of you are just like, this makes perfect sense who this is.
All of you are able to figure it out quite easily, in fact. I don't think I have to explain myself.
How?
I love the thought that that goes down the line with everyone passing the perception of everyone does a who, what, when, where, why.
She turns to Medea, and like her grin grows as she kind of casts her eyes across everybody. With her right hand, she's reaching into the bag of holding and pulling out a sealed scroll. She says, "Oh, there's magic's weird. It's not normal.
This is not the normal rate of maturation for your species."
Well, I think we could take a lot of time debating what should and shouldn't be considered to be normal, but I'm here. It's been a strange year. Year for you, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And
right.
One day.
Seemingly decade for you.
Well, a decade and a month and a day. And she hands the scroll to Uber, still without looking.
I think that Upa's mouth is like literally just hanging open. They take the scroll, but they're like,
Medea would
don't-
know. How old does that make Kella?
20.
Okay.
She says, anyway, I guess the note will explain why it's me, but she kind of steps back and does a kind of slightly ostentatious twirl into a bow and says, I should introduce myself as Calandra Massandra. It's been a decade for me since I have seen you. And then she crushes the scroll against Uber as she goes to hug Uber.
I think like Uba doesn't even like hug back at first because they're like, so like I've been around humans, this is weird, but then after maybe like just enough time that it starts to become a little awkward, they hug back really hard. And say it's so good to see you.
She smiles and says, yeah, it's nice to see people that I know that are not. I'll explain sometime.
We must basically be strangers to you.
No, not really. The
Suppose Will
time.
everything.
Sorry, I didn't hear that properly.
I suppose Will would have told you everything, though.
Well, I was there for a lot of things, and I saw you all do great heroic things. Oh, and she reaches into the bag of holding and pulls out like a relatively thick tome that's been bound, and also hands that to Uber. And on the front of it, emblazoned in pure gold, like maybe it's paint, but maybe it's an actual piece of metal that's been bound into the front of this book. It just says the Saga of Uber.
I think Uba's like kind of awkwardly juggling the scroll and the book, but they maybe like open it up and take a look at the first, like kind of skim the first couple pages, and they kind of chuckle to themselves a little bit as there's probably how Will and Uba met, I'm guessing, in the beginning of the book.
It definitely starts before that. Like it starts with your stuff being stolen. It's like a
Okay.
very expansive section about how your things were stolen, and that set you on this path.
I think Uba kind of laughs to themselves and tucks away the scroll on the book for now and says, "Well, something tells me that we might have a bit of catching up to do. Shall we?" And they kind of like gesture towards the castle.
She nods firmly. You all rolled super well. She's also wearing like makeup and is looking like she's trying to impress you a little bit with your rolls. Like far more effort than we'll ever put into trying to impress any of you, which admittedly was none. But she
oh, sorry, go ahead.
She steps back and then she goes to like hug Medea. Maybe struggling to get her arms around Medea.
Medea gives a hug back, and they help a little bit. They seem like misty-eyed is the wrong word, but they're obviously like batting their eyes a little bit, and they're like, they're sort of confused by the situation. Like they were expecting things to go a very certain way, and this is not at all how it was supposed to go. This is not what they like prepared for, It's good to see you grown up, at least.
She smiled and says, I suspect I'm the preeminent apprentice that's ever existed in the entire land. And she takes a step back from you and kind of strikes a pose that she suspects looks slightly heroic. Before kind of swirling towards Alvaron. She's very kinetic in the way she moves as well. Her dress is always flowing in a different direction, and her hair is kind of going in a different direction as well. And she goes to hug Alvaron.
Just kind of a moment of hesitancy, just taking all of this in, and then kind of recognizing Well, no, this is beyond normal. Whatever normal you were used to before you met these people, this is the new normal. And a deep hug and kind of an introspective look at this person, and it's amazing to see how you've grown.
She
We've
smiles.
missed you.
She's kind of got her head a little bit like tilted into your chest because she's shorter than Alvaron, and everyone else sees her nose crinkle up at the salt smell that she hasn't experienced for a long time. She stands back and says, "You're all kind of like I remember. Uber the same. Medea, didn't you have hair?" He looks up at Alvaron.
It's kind of Alvaron just kind of gently strokes the beard and just, this is more recent than you might remember. Don't worry, I lose it tonight. I'll explain the tradition later if you want.
Keller nods and finally moves to Solverin and kind of inclines her head, taking on a different stance, and says in a even more aggressively perfect Gathite than Will spoke. I am pleased to see you. And then she says the word for like member of my tribe. That I can't work out what that word would be in English. And she kind of like looks at you for a second with like the respect that a Gathite would show to an elder, and then like steps in to hug you as well. Although she stabs herself on your armor probably.
Silverin just kind of like tries to shift to adjust this armor a little bit for her, and hugs her a little more gently than he did the others. Almost like a little bit more respectfully, but more just lack of familiarity with who she's become. And says, "It is good to see you well, little sister." And as always, his Gathite is the casual sort of runs itself together of somebody who has spoken it since they were a child. And then he says, "Preeminent apprentice, perhaps you might give mine some lessons." And he finally looks over at Maraveth and kind of like gauges if he thinks that Maraveth can now join all of these people and not feel like he's immediately going to be assaulted with hugs.
As Silverin's attention drifts, so does Keller's to Kojin, and she like kind of does her swirling skip over and pulls from the bag a pastry that looks kind of like a croissant. It's like a laminated dough, but the smell from it seems like it's still hot, and the smell from it seems to be quite meaty. And she breaks it into half, and it's like a filled croissant with meat. And she like puts her arm around Kojin in the way that like a child would with a bigger dog, and then just starts feeding Kojin this filled pastry.
I think Kojin makes whatever the Drake equivalent of a purr is, and is very happy to see her.
So like a rampaging growl.
Yeah, like anyone else would be like terrified of this noise, but like anyone that's been around Kojin is just like, oh, that's just
She speaks like a really soft, kind of soothing, like very the way that you talk to a pet in Draconic to him, like as she's finishing feeding the filled pastry, which was quite small for Kojin as Kojin is now. But she kind of, while still hugging Kojin's neck, looks at the rest of me and goes, I can answer any questions if you like. When we are not under the sun. It's been a long time since I've been in the desert. She kind of looks up and realizes that it's not really as pleasant as her memory of it was.
I think with that, Uba says, "Well, if that's the case, perhaps we can find some shade," and starts like walking off towards the castle.
I think you all kind of turn to follow, seeing some of you for the first time. This castle. Has Calandra been here before? I don't think they have.
No,
Um,
I don't
no.
think so.
I think even if Will had come down, it would have been like for a day trip, and Calandra would have been doing
Yeah.
studies.
So, Calandra, you are seeing this castle for the first time. Some of you are seeing it newly renovated, freshly painted, and restored, leaving the sort of dais on which the teleportation circle has been placed in front of the oasis. You walk up to this resplendent castle. It has a large kind of sky blue dome that has been newly painted with various different designs. Various towers and minarets kind of dot the structure. There's a large gate which opens up, already having been prepared for its honored guests to come through. Uba, as they all walk in, what have you prepared for them?
I think so. When you go in, it's kind of like this war/throne room area, and there's probably like food prepared, like kind of snacks, and there's also like a big bowl of like some sort of ice drink, which like in the desert is like very bougie to have anything that has ice in it. There's what else? I think it just looks like it's like some sort of like very fancy like garden party almost, except inside because it's way too hot outside to have a garden party. And Meryl is probably there too, like waiting to greet everybody.
Right. You all see Meryl kind of smiling in this almost slightly like put upon way. And I don't remember how Jack described them, but I very distinctly remember them being an older woman. So they kind of say, hello, honored guests of Lord Uva. We welcome you to this manor, as they kind of gesture outwards to all of the foods and various other things that have been prepared for dining area. So you see kind of an array of delicacies, fish, goat, meat, which would be lamb. I don't know why I say goat meat. It's been a minute since I had to do this.
Goat and meat.
Goat meat. Goat cheese is what I should have
It's
said.
a very Catholic interpretation of everything. Well, some of this is fish, but other bits of it are meat. So
Yeah, so there's fish, there's various cheeses. You see kind of course, lots of frozen treats, because that's something that Uba likes a lot. So there's like ice cream and shaved ice and all kinds of different things, as well as, of course, a small but noticeable fountain, which is currently giving forth wine out of its various spigots. You are all kind of gestured inwards and begin to partake of these festivities.
As we're walking in, Keller, like, who is, I guess, walking probably between Kojin and Uber just by nature of the way they're traveling, reaches down, and for a normal person, it would be like to clutch their lower forearm, but on Uber, I guess it probably clutches like your upper arm. And she says in Draconic, I think the words in Draconic are, your horde is like from the legends, but with inflection, it is clear that she means that your castle is like from fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
And her eyes are just wide, looking at this sky blue roof and like all these ice treats, and it's like something out of the stories that she heard long before she even met any of you.
I think that Uba is they probably don't hide it very well, but they're delighted that someone else in this group speaks Draconic now. And they respond in kind and says, uh, I appreciate that, and I hope that you enjoy, and kind of like gestures back at the food and stuff.
She's nodding, like staring at this feast, unlike anything she's had for many, many years.
Solverin is, given that he has not paused and washed the travel off himself, is kind of eyeballing to see if Bailey lurks anywhere. But he nods at the familiar sights, and once more kind of gently indicates that Maraveth should be following, not lingering with the caravan. And he will go. If Maraveth doesn't come to them, he will go collect him.
I think you have to go and collect.
Yeah, so Solverin, like just in an undertone, mostly to Uba, says, "I will join you momentarily," and goes to collect the young man.
Okay, you go out and you kind of find them standing by the caravan, kind of having finished helping unload things. They spy you and they say, "Oh, master." They kind of nod subtly.
Solverin just nods back at him and says, "This will be your traveling group if you are to stay with me. You should come and sup with us."
Is that and he has this tick that he does a lot, and you can tell when he's nervous because he glances down towards his left arm. Am I worthy for such company?
Solverin has, I think, how long have they been traveling together? Most of this time?
It's been a few months now.
Yeah. Solverin just places his palm gently like between his shoulder blades and just starts to gesture him in, and says, "Do not doubt what I ask of you."
As you say. And they will walk in, and Uba, you've met Maraveth maybe a couple times now, but at least once before, along with young Caro, the bird speaker, who kind of took over once Silverin had left. But for the rest of you, you are seeing this person for the first time. So Silverin kind of exited and then came back in, having retrieved another member of the caravan. You see a Gathite, clearly younger, probably not forgetting their age. I think at this point we said they're 19-ish, something like that. Like they're just hit full adulthood maturity. But very noticeably, they are missing a hand on their left side, and because I wasn't sure if he was going to be here or not. They're also missing an eye, right?
Yeah, or like it's scarred and milky.
Scarred and clouded over. So their right eye is scarred and clouded over, and their left hand is gone, just above the wrist. And you can see them walking in somewhat unsure of themselves. Anybody who would like to can make me a perception check as well.
You're all going to be shocked to find that Keller follows Will in perception.
Just immaculate.
I love nothing more than characters that can't see shit.
Okay.
Do not perceive, do not look.
So Uba is actually the only one who notices this because they're, I think they're trying to keep it on the down low, but you can see that they are wearing a raven skull necklace that's kind of been shifted beneath the robe, but you kind of saw the outline of it as they stepped in before they like kind of adjusted to maneuver it beneath their other cloak again. But they kind of nod and say, greetings. The honored kinfinder has invited me to join in your meal.
I think that Uba. I'm not sure if this would be allowed, but can I say that Uba knows exactly one thing in Gathite from their
Sure.
trade and staying with Solverin, which is just like a customary greeting. So I think they're gonna say that to Maraveth, but it's like, have you ever heard like someone with like a very like American accent speak Spanish with the American accent and it
Yes.
sounds really bad? It's like that.
The
And it's like they're
equivalent.
trying very hard, but it's like, when people say like quesadillas, it's like that.
You're like,
Hola, how does it go?
Yeah.
como estas? Or pal.
Uh,
That's what it sounds like.
yeah, so they say that greeting, but then in common say, a friend of Silverin is a friend of all of ours, and then they say welcome and kind of like usher them in. But I think they're doing it in like a way where they know like Gathites are not nearly as like chatty or social unless they get to know people. So they're trying to be very respectful, even though their greeting was very bad.
Yeah, you all see Marveth kind of like look over everybody before shuffling towards the table and like picking up a grape and giving it like a look over before popping one in his mouth.
I think Medea's eating pretty messily because they're not used to like social events still. So like they're just going to town on a piece of meat.
Keller also, while understanding etiquette, does not respect the reason for etiquette most of the time, like particularly in this company. So she has just 100% gone to all of the cold, like frozen treats and is not really paying attention to the other foods.
Medea's got like a whole ham leg, and you know how people go around on corn on the cobs, just like slowly rotating it.
I don't know why, but I come up with some awful images, and that one hit me in a way that I can't imagine why it did. Keller threw a mouthful of some kind of cold thing that is already giving her a slight headache. Kind of looks at her and says, "You should, read the scroll from Will."
Uba says, "Oh, right," and grabs it out. So Uba will be reading that while y'all are snacking.
It's not very long, Keller says. Probably not being meant to have read it at all.
Does Uba have sauces at the table?
Sure.
Okay.
Solverin just kind of shamelessly goes over to, if not read over Uba's shoulder, wait for Uba to explain what they're reading. And it looks just as hilarious as it always has when he's in the war room, kind of listening in on something that Uba is doing, for lack of anything better to do, just towering over them.
Lumen? Yeah, the Lumen.
While the reading is happening, that's all going on. I think Maraveth, I didn't roll insight, sensing that like The only other member of the party or of this kind of gathering who is even like slightly more on the outs, or like that everyone is like slightly still becoming comfortable with again, is Kalandra. So he kind of sidles up closer to you and says, "Great."
She responds in Gathite. Sovereign said that he was Sovereign's apprentice, right?
Yeah, like
Yes.
Silverin mentioned that kind of quietly, almost to Kella.
Kella responds in Gathite, essentially saying greetings, and then what his position would be under a version of Sovereign that's not exiled, even though Kella still thinks that Sovereign is at least half exiled. And then says, still in Gathite, but I'm going to say it just in English because I can't be bothered parsing it through my brain. Says that the apprentices of these great heroes have to stick together. And she like hands him an ice lolly.
Takes it. He says, "Thank you, wise words," and he'll like start to. It is strange that cold things are so prized in the lands below. But he, continues to munch on it, having felt like he fulfilled his task of introducing himself to somebody that only really he set upon himself.
Kella, I think largely off screen, begins to go into a like quite long and in Gathite examination of maybe it's because most people don't deal with such extremities as like Gathites on their cold mountains, or people that live their whole lives deep in the desert. So it's the people that don't live at the extremes that want to have the extreme cold or the extreme heat. And it is this really a lot of words in Gathite.
Yeah.
More words than a tribe might speak in a week.
I think he like is listening very politely and nodding along. He kind of says, without any malice or like intending to offend, he says, "Your Gathite is excellent, but I fear you do not understand speak."
She pauses for a second, translating that into common, going over it, and she says, I am unused to being around my tribe, so I'm excited.
I understand.
But
He'll switch to common. Perhaps this might be more comfortable for you.
No, I'm going to say a lot more words if we're speaking in common. If you want less words, I'm going to say a lot more words if we're speaking in common.
I am only a few months into my studies. Wouldn't mind.
She falls back into her discourse about extreme heat and cold, leading to people less liking these flavors.
I think by the time that conversation is moving to its next phase, I assume that Marissa has finished reading.
Point 2.
Yeah, Uva has finished reading the letter, and they look like kind of bittersweet about it. It wasn't a very long scroll. But I think maybe they'll look at Silverin and kind of like gesture with the scroll and say, seems like Will not be joining us for the foreseeable future, but she's all right.
Silverin looks at Uba for a long moment and then merely nods, once very sharply. Idles there for a moment longer before heading to the feasting table, and kind of surveying the room to see the others. And as always, his eyes go, straight to Mariveth. In any situation like this, just but he doesn't approach the duo. He's just watching with his head slightly tilted as Kella just speaks and speaks.
Also, I feel like I should point out her points are pretty accurate. Like, she's not just gibbering about stuff.
Yeah,
no, she is very excitable.
That does make sense. Like, I do understand what you're saying. It still feels strange to me, though. I think at this point in time, some of the entertainment that Uba has brought begins to come out. Some minor acrobatics, some music. It begins playing. Just like background to the festivities that you can toggle on. But as it does so, you also do start to hear outside the pealing of thunder. As the storm, which previously had been on the horizon, is now moving closer and kind of fully over. And you can kind of see even inside, because there's many windows and various different things that are meant to let the light in. The quality of this light goes from the sunny desert to a darker overcast until you have to light, the nighttime candles in order to have everything still be visible. But the servants kind of do this automatically. They don't even need direction or anything like that. But as you guys are talking and conversing and catching up even, somewhere distant, kind of almost following up another peal of thunder, there's a loud knocking at the door to the castle.
I think that Uba is just gonna sigh really loudly and say, I know I put that sign there for a reason, but yes, people still come. And then kind of leans over and whispers to Meryl something about getting the door.
Of course. And they'll kind of, they won't do it themselves. They'll direct two of the other servants to go and walk over. You see one of them kind of open, the small looking out door that's put into these larger set of double doors. You kind of hear the brief conversation. Who goes there? Before thunder peals once again outside, and you can see the flash this time of the nearby lightning. The person who none of you can see at this point in time, just because they're blocked by the door and this guard looking out, they share some words, and the servant looks back and he says, my lord, it is a well-dressed man. He says he is from lands far from here and wishes to speak with you and your companions.
I think Uba looks kind of surprised at this, that someone would randomly show up here, but says, kind of addresses everyone else. This is probably just some sort of trader, visiting merchant, but just in case, be on your guard. And Uba's gonna go to the door and open it up to see who it is. I think that actually they're in this door, it's modified so at 2 feet tall there's another little window, so Uba opens it out and sticks their head out and looks up at this person.
There's the looking window, the small door, the bigger door.
Yeah.
You open this door and you see before you, as it is starting to rain a little bit, but just just the drizzle has started. It's not pouring or anything yet, but you can see it hit the sand and then beat up instead of being absorbed because it's still so dry. Looking up, you see a a very like ornately dressed human man. You could make me, if you like, I would accept a history check, an insight check. Either of those. They're going to tell you very different things, but either of those you could use.
I'll go with insight. Eh.
They're adorned. You could just see this really, but they're adorned as if they were going to a ball of some sort. You're not sure about the fashion. It's not El Karan, and this is a human man. But it's very, very like silks, like gold and silver trimmings, like that kind of thing. As you're looking at them, you're not really sure what to make of this person. You don't know how that they knew you all were going to be there, or what their intent is. So you don't feel like hostility or anything like that. And they're alone. Like absolutely, there's nobody else anywhere in sight. Any of the villagers have gone in to escape the thunderstorm that has just rolled over the village and the oasis. And he looks down at you with an affable smile. He gives you a bow. Good Lord Uba, might I be invited into your home?
Torn here, because I as a person would be like, who the fuck is this? But I think Uba, because they have to be a bit more diplomatic and they're not getting like bad vibes or anything. This is just like some nicely dressed dude that rolled up. So I guess Uba will like close the window, and then you hear like all these like locks unlocking and the door swings open for them to come in. It says, welcome stranger, I didn't catch your name.
I had not yet given it, but as I know yours already, it'd only be polite. Well, I have different names, but the one which you might use is Fawn. Or
Is that audible to everyone?
It's audible. I think if you're listening, you can hear it. He's not trying to talk quietly, but he's not like really being loud about it. That's Farn, Farn.
I think Keller is listening. Also, did it take 12 seconds for Uber to get to the door?
It's been 12
finish
seconds
this interaction
since like Uba left from their spot, got to the door, looked, had a conversation, and then opened the door.
Right.
Probably
Uber said to be careful. So Keller's hand under the table crackles with lightning, and then she encloses the lightning into her hand. And with a second action, clicks her fingers, and a very familiar cat appears and lands on the table in front of her. And she reaches up and she puts what anybody that is looking at her would notice is like a little bead into the cat's mouth. And then pulls the cat onto her lap. But we'll also be trying to listen in when he speaks.
I got you. Yeah, I think that Uba will kind of like invite this man in, but like not like all the way in, like kind of out of the rain, but still there. And I think that Kojin, she's also sitting there, kind of looking at this guy. Uba says, I'm happy to give you shelter from the storm, but I'm curious what brings you here. You're not a face that I recognize.
No, indeed, I have traveled far to come here on this this day of meetings.
Uba, I think at this point, Uba kind of like turns to look at everybody else, like kind of this like, does anybody know this man type of look. Not trying to be rude, but also just like
Feel free with that gesture from Uba to make me Religion, history, insight, any of those.
But not Arcana.
Not I don't think so.
I just can't roll anything worthwhile today.
Man, Charlie's on fire.
I love Kella's dice, by the way. I just properly noticed them. Those are gorgeous.
They're very pretty, but
They were
Upa
black
apparently
until
knows shit.
2 hours ago.
So Medea, this just seems like a guy to you. It's very strange. You don't know what's going on. Uba, you're kind of like thinking like, should I know this person? Like, is this somebody that I should know? But nothing comes to mind. Kella, you note that they're dressed in what is your understanding to be a very modern Romnian fashion, like high imperial style, what is current, at least from a year ago, what would have been like very trendy. Probably there's some differences, but you assume it is still like very within like up to date recent fashionable trends. But nothing else about them really stands out for you. Even the name, which you feel like is important somehow, you're unable to place. So Baron, as you're looking at this person, you're kind of, you have a moment. Sorry, go ahead.
All of that happens, and then Kella twists her hand, and I will re-roll it.
Okay.
Because I want to succeed with Kella.
What are you?
Kella is good.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake.
Same thing, basically the same information.
I chronal shift back in time, and I think, no, that button is new. Stupid chronal shift.
You are more confident that this is an updated fashion from what Will and Cal had previously like trained you on. So Baron, as you look at them,
Garbage.
the there's a slowing effect, but it's, you know that it's not like a spell or something like that. It's just that you feel almost like your adrenaline spikes, and like everything around you seems to move slightly more slowly as you meet their gaze as they kind of are scanning across the room. And when you first looked at them, they seemed completely perfectly normal. But now that you're meeting their gaze, in their eyes, in a moment, you see almost like you're transported somewhere else for a second. You see a world of threads crisscrossing every which way. They seem to be almost like silk twine that is like strange, stretching outwards into infinity, of various different colors, blues, red, gold, etc. And as you glance upwards even, you can see one straining out of yourself, this deep purple, before you kind of like blink and you meet them, but they're just eyes. But they seem to have seen you seeing them. This you do not think is any kind of mortal person that you have just encountered.
Does Solverin get a sense beyond this sort of, I'm assuming with all of those strings attached, that it's almost like a sense of power? Does he get any sense of threat or malice or neutrality or?
You understand this to be an auspicious person. If there's a any sense of like intent, I think it would just be somewhere between amusement and neutrality. You don't think that they mean harm, at least not directly. So,
If I'm within 60 feet, I'm going to use Divine Sense.
you do not. I don't think you would know. If you want to make a roll, you can make a roll, but I think that's metagaming to do that at this point.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah,
I can't
so
think of a reason why you would divine sense just on this person who hasn't done anything at the moment, other than kind of be
I think Medea
strange?
would, because at least to Medea, this reads as suspicious that someone is barging in or knocking on the castle when they're not told from the area, and like colorful ropes. Even if this is just a guy, that sets off alarms. Like, I don't think it's that even if they don't recognize what this person is, they're like, this is a very unusual situation and a very unusual figure in a place where they really don't look like they should be.
I'll let you, if you want to do that, roll me an insight check, because I think to your eyes this is an unusual person, but it is a person. You don't have strong enough reason to do divine sense at this moment.
Okay.
Because literally they haven't done anything. They've opened the door, given their name, and said hello.
So
Go ahead.
after that moment breaks, and Silverin is still there, where he had gone to the feasting table, he turns back to Uba, who had looked at him with that, what do you make of this expression? And he says with a sort of inflection and pacing that he has not used since the first weeks that they were with together, a little slower, even more remote. We host an honored guest, Lord Uba.
I'm just gonna roll an insight check on that to see if Uba figures out what you.
I'm Silverin.
Yeah. Uba does not pick up on Silverin and thinks that Silverin is just trying to be polite to this man. So I think Uba will say, well, today I wasn't expecting any visitors, but it seems you've traveled a long way, so please come in. And they kind of gesture back towards the table, and kind of make a gesture to Meryl of bring an empty chair over.
They walk in, and at the offering of a chair, they will take a seat and say, "Your hospitality precedes you. I thank you." And he'll pick up a little bite of cheese and very slowly, now kind of talking to the room. I wish not to take up too much of your time, but I have been set upon a task. Task which I can only complete here, this place. If you would like to, at this point, I think you could do Divine Sense Video. That is suspicious for him to say.
Okay,
I think Uba's hand is just gonna kind of lightly rest on their dagger, just in case he tries any shit. Uba's gonna be ready.
I'll pop Divine Sense into that.
May I ask who has set you upon such a task?
So Medea, this is not a fiend or undead. There is something celestial to their nature, but it's almost cut with something. They're not wholly within that realm. This isn't an angel or something like that. It reads to you as muffled, almost like a bell ringing where you're wearing head buffs on.
Something is suppressed.
Mm-hmm. Or it's impossible for you to divine sense fully what their nature is.
Yeah.
So Medea, they turn and look at you and says, I am bidden here as I am to all places by the threads that bind.
What is your task, I suppose?
I bring only a missive. rare as that is, you should be honored as such. Such messages might reach your gracious ear.
Does the message come from anyone in specific? Your master have a name? Or is it just the threads that bring you here?
I have no master as such that you would understand. Only tasks that are bidden to me by the things that bind. I can tell you now. We can share a gracious meal. Then, upon my parting, I will give these words to you. And in between, you might ask me other questions. So, as you might have seen, I do not answer directly. Shrugs.
When he's mentioning the threads that bind, does that trigger anything like that I can make an Arcana check or history check on?
You could make an Arcana or history check.
Keller.
Okay. I mean, the threads that bind to you is a phrase that speaks of fate. Oftentimes in whether within magic itself or within like texts about magic, people see like destiny and things as threads, like diviners, divination magic. It's often spoken about in this way, like the plucking of threads, pulling on them, tracing them to see where they might lead, and in particular, they're associated with like fate, as some people understand it. Some fates are written, some fates are not. Those which are often traced back to the individual through their thread, sometimes known as a life. That sounds like what this person is referring to. So to your ears, it sounds like whatever this entity is speaking of some kind of prophecy or prophetic words that are going to share with you. You're not sure what this person is, although that's not a task that a normal human is set upon. It might be some kind of angel. It might be some kind of fae creature. It might be something else. That's what you know with a 30.
Keller says, if we are to share a meal before you share your prophetic missive, would you be offended if our questions were in the form of spells?
Be welcome. Try me with your magics.
I will, man, I fucking wish that I ever prepared Detect Magic. But I always have prepared. Keller reaches up with her right hand as she opens her spell book and flips to a page. And I will cast Detect Astral she pushes her finger into her head, like just her pointer finger into her forehead, and it splays into a hand full of pointer fingers that wrap around her face, and when it pulls away, her eyes are missing, and there's just these two like small pools of the astral sea sunken in her eyes.
Uba gags a little bit at this.
It's still very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see if there's something weird astrally happening here. This spell I told you that I was taking entirely for just weird roleplay things.
Yeah, so as you look at it, this all around the room is normal, as you might expect when you've tried this outside the astral sea in a place without a real connection. There's nobody sleeping here even, so there's not even that faintest hint of it. But around this is almost it's almost like you're looking at an inky form, as though this person has not even that they don't have a presence in the astral sea, but almost that they negate it where they are standing. There is an absence of the dreaming that this person maybe creates, maybe it follows them. You can tell, or you know instinctually that this generally is not possible. This whatever this being is has some great control over the dreaming world.
Keller, this lasts for ages, but there's no reason to keep it up after learning that information. So Keller lets her the smoky green sea of her eyes dissipate as she drops her concentration, and she lets out a sigh that is not dissimilar to the sigh that Will would make upon seeing something that Will considered to be deeply magically beautiful. But she says, well, that's one of the more fascinating things I've seen for a long time. And she pulls out her spell book and like goes to one of the back pages. Most of these pages are empty. She gets the back pages and she like takes a rainbow colored quill and she starts to like sketch the void in the astral sea at the back of her book, while still paying attention.
And yeah, the figure Farn kind of waits and it's like looking like almost probably just like a splaying gesture, like that's.
I think that Uba doesn't have anything to say. I don't like they rolled very badly and no one's like really said much out loud. So I think Uba's just like very confusedly like says, "Shall we eat?" And like maybe some of the servants will bring out like more food, like actual dinner instead of just snacks.
Okay.
When a suitable pause has happened from Keller doing the magic thing and nobody else wants to jump in, Keller has 860 questions about this man for him. And we'll just be like, okay, she'll start with like, how is it that you have the magical capability to negate any form of the astral sea, even affecting like your form?
Uba chokes on a piece of meat and starts coughing.
It's like a student being like, I will take diligent notes and ask all the questions to learn all the things.
Is a intelligent question, one which is difficult to answer. How does a fish swim? Does a bird fly? I could not
The bird one
you
is
in ways that
called,
you might understand.
The bird one is aerodynamics. It's like the weight of the bird. I don't think that's not the point. Okay, I have another question. The thread, the fate that has led you here, if that is your master, does that mean that we were all fated to be here? Was it always me that was here? Or was sometimes someone else here? What if forever ago in the astral sea Medea was disintegrated? Was that always the case?
Make a persuasion check.
I was going to skill empower my persuasion during the time it took Uber to get there, and I thought, no, I don't need to do that. I'll chronal shift this one as well, assuming that's a failure. Just, she butchers the first question.
It's not a full success, I'll tell you that.
Alright, I'll chronal shift it, that's fine. She watches herself just make the mistake of like, just the question doesn't come out right, and she's like, I need a redo on that question. That's a bit better.
They kind of think about it and they say, no, threads are intertwined. Not flip and move, weave. But you, as he glances to everybody else, you made a promise which is powerful. And so it was destined that you gather upon this day by your own very words. And sometimes it was another and not you. But chance has it, I am gathered by 6. Well, plus others, as he gestures towards the servants dismissingly. but 6
Hmm.
who matter. 6 who have been invited. And me, a 7th, an auspicious number.
Mhm.
Over.
I'd be fine with dinner, but I would like to know what's at least briefly in the missive.
But Medea, what if the prophecy dictates that he leaves as soon as he says the prophecy?
Ah, clever one. If I am to read it to you, I must go, or there might be no more questions asked upon me after it is heard. But if you have no more questions to ask, he gestures to stand.
Keller looks imploringly at everyone if it's fine for her to
Sol-
ask a lot of questions.
Uba gives like a respectful nod. I think Uba's way out of their depth and is like, I don't know how Kella is a young adult now, but she's definitely smarter than I am. They don't say that out loud.
Solverin nods to let Kella keep asking the questions.
Yeah.
But he does indicate, with a small gesture, sort of like the hand sign, kind of probing to see if Kella knows hand signs just as well as spoken word. He has a question, but it's not pressing, and he is enjoying listening to the answers that Kella is attempting to glean out of this person.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, but it's probably better that I leave some things for me to ask in another meeting with someone ordained by fate.
Hmm.
She thinks for a moment and says, man, Keller has a bunch of questions. Jack doesn't have that many questions. Keller's just interested in magic. She says, is the storm related to the fate that you bring? Because it feels all very dramatic.
Well, nothing else. Fate must be dramatic. After a fashion, yes, the storm is here because I am here. Storms follow me. I am, in some ways, a brother to the peal of thunder. We both foretell lightning.
Keller writes that exact quote down in the back of her spellbook because that feels like something she could research later.
I would say that also that has like a religious ring to it to my ears.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's. Does that gleam any insight as to if this is related to any particular order or deity or any domain?
I'll let you make a new religion check, having learned additional information about it.
Yeah. Holy shit. Okay.
Keller's too far into this arcane discourse to think about religion.
I was not
Finally.
expecting
To think about
her
a
to
lesser
actually
magic.
do well.
Yeah.
So from what Medea, Uba, I mean, to you, this could be any number of deities or something like that. There's a lot of mystery here. This could be an envoy of Syl or something. Clearly this is not a mortal person, and this the way that they're talking, everything about them screams at you that this is some kind of important figure, but it's nothing that you've ever read about. You're not that well studied in religion itself. But you get the distinct sense that this entity is somehow older, and in some ways maybe even more close to divinity than any other thing that you've encountered so far, personally speaking. there's like a kind of power here that is not so direct as like a charging flaming demon or like a great and powerful wizard or an angel. But it's like deeper. It is more intrinsic to the world than and something else or anything else that you've been. And Sylvain, you get that same sense. It is definitely not of Mordain specifically, although you get the sense that I think in your mind, like the words that you get are, "This is one who the Raven follows." Medea, you think that this is um, some kind of Auror being, meaning that like they have existed since existence.
Mhm.
It is not a deity. This is not a godlike thing.
It's a function of reality.
Yeah, like this is a thing that is, we'll say, in some way, or at least an envoy of a thing that is.
Mhm.
It is rare and unusual, but you don't know how often such a person has been encountered without the people encountering them never realizing what they've just spoken to. Um,
Mhm.
and you know that this is definitely like fairly momentous of an occasion. Is your understanding? This is unusual, to say the least. And those religious amongst you might need to consult directly with their deities if they hope to learn more.
While, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Medea is well read enough on this specific subject too that like they would know of like, would they have an idea of like if this figure or if this function is associated with any particular deity that calls upon it, or is this like entirely independent? Because
You would probably, if you've read of such an entity before, probably they would have been called the being between, meaning that they both serve and have some power over many of the deities. So Mordain and Syl in particular kind of
so
maybe
this is,
utilize their nature, I guess you could say.
yeah, this is it would be odd to say, especially they aren't entirely separate from the gods, but they are a different thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's when like domains and the nature of things starts to cross over. Um, Medea's gonna open with the question of how long has it been since you've come to a meeting of this great importance? Years, decades?
Yesterday, tomorrow.
20 minutes
Uh,
ago.
I-
Fundamentally, time doesn't actually work in the way that we think that time works. So Keller just throws at you as an aggressive attack.
I have passed by old farmers and told them their fortunes and never been noticed. I have spoken to kings who thought that they could outwit me. I have seen fish glean more information from me than most other mortals could hope to. I take no notice of what is momentous and not, only that it might be.
Are you excited to deliver this news?
After a fashion, I am excited to eat. He asked questions. Are you excited when you go to work?
Yes.
That is unusual. I ask a merchant that, usually they say no. But that is a boring profession anyways. and not often one which I speak to.
I imagine, since most things cannot outwit you, I'm more curious into the nature of your existence. But I'd leave to Kella some other questions first.
What happens if once you give us the prophetic missive that you're meant to give us, and we are entwined into fate, and the threads connect us and you, and the momentous missive you're giving us? What happens if one of those threads is then severed? Does that mean that the entire endeavor and task that you have undertaken is failed, or that the task that fate has for us is failed?
It's an interesting question.
Every time, I'll give you a moment to
For sure.
think more if you like, but every time he says that something is intelligent or interesting, there is a part of Keller that is really obviously preening under that praise of this is clearly a big deal person, and he thinks that she is smart and she likes that praise.
As he's responding, Silverin just very deliberately passes one of the bowls of spiced meat over to him, and then pushes something else. It doesn't even matter what it is, in Uba's direction, because Uba had looked poleaxed a moment ago, and it's not a good sign if Uba is so surprised that they can't eat.
I think you pushed basically the equivalent of a popsicle, and Uba just picks it up and starts eating it. They're just wide-eyed. They're this is out of my league. I don't do any of this god shit, so y'all have fun. I'm gonna eat this popsicle.
He kind of says, failure is something that only those who wish to succeed can know of. I only tell you what I tell you. If it does not come to pass, then it's not a failure on me. It simply didn't come to be. Some threads are strong, and some are weak. Some can be severed. And some stand taut, like mithril, and cannot be broken. I cannot tell you which threads are yours, but I can tell you that if you wish something to be true, it often has a greater chance of being so. But at the same time, if you wish something not to be true, more than likely it ends up coming real.
Does Keller, I'm going to make a wisdom saving throw to see if she realizes that she is just going crazy. No. She says, does that mean that people that have a fundamental belief that something should happen to them are affecting fate in a way that is more significant than someone that doesn't think that?
Yes.
And Keller's furiously writing.
So
That's just a fundamental change in how she views the world.
does a being's level of consciousness affect its ability to manifest fate, or does it need only be alive?
Some simply are better at willing or manifesting things go as they wish. Much like some are more insightful. It can be practiced, but teachers of such things are far between.
So,
For me, it is only instinction.
is there any place you cannot go?
Only
Any
beyond.
sanctum? Beyond here or beyond the veil?
Beyond. Beyond the edges of where things stop. At this, as food is being passed around, you do see they eat, and they really savor every bite, like somebody who is like maybe starving or has like eaten like gruel for the past decade or something like that. Like they're
They
really
seem to
like
fa-
chewing on it and like thinking about the flavor of it.
do they really favor one kind of food or the other?
They seem to be eating in particular meat.
Hmm.
To the point that if they are like passed vegetables to them, they kind of almost immediately just pass them on,
Mhm.
unless it's like got something else. That and anything with sugar in it.
Do you yourself have a fate you follow, or do you merely follow others?
Does fate follow fate? I suppose I do.
Do you see your own threads, or are those invisible to you?
I have no strings to tie me down. I
Hmm.
if I have a thread, it is not for me to know.
When Silverin saw him, I know you described Silverin seeing that purple thread coming off of himself.
Yeah.
And you described, silver and gold, and I think a few red and blue. Is this consistent with what Silverin saw, or did he see threads coming from the person themselves?
Thinking back, you didn't see the person in the vision. It was almost like you were in a separate space. Uh, Make a willpower, a wisdom saving throw.
Nice. I love when things send me. Here comes the one.
I ran out of chronal shifts for you, Charlie.
You when you saw it, you very distinctly remembered everything, and much of that has faded from you. Um, as you try to remember, like maybe if you saw like their thread or maybe other people's threads, the only memory you have left, apart from like the idea of the place, is your own purple thread.
Damn. Yeah, I was just about to ask about that. So Silverin is kind of leaning against the table, and he had taken notice and been deliberately sliding food over. And as he's thinking about this, he's not quite frowning, but he kind of covers his mouth a little bit as he used to do to just hide sort of like micro expressions. And just keeps studying the man. And doesn't ask the question that he'd asked Kella to give him a chance to ask at some point. Just watches the proceedings.
Killer. Sorry, go ahead.
Will we meet you again?
I should think not.
Keller says, I have more questions, but I will save them for when we do meet again because I believe that we will.
I'm in agreement with Kella.
And so perhaps we shall. He picks up a goblet that has been filled with wine and drains it.
You said you cannot go beyond. Do you visit the things that we fight?
No. Nothing that you have fought. There's some things you may fight.
Were you ever once a man, or this avatar, I suppose, you take on now?
He kind of glances down, almost like you've just told somebody, "Hey, you've got like a stain on your shirt." He's like, thinks about it. He says, "No," and it's not like a spell. It's not like there's magic that happens or there's like a ripple. It's like very suddenly your understanding of this person has shifted to a degree where sitting before you is instead of a human in Romnian fashion, is a gnome, a female gnome with black hair, dressed regally in silks from the Elkar Desert. Perhaps this nature is more suiting to you. Then again, they are a Gathite, tall, proud, with markings on them of ravens, bears, great eagles, and all sorts of other painted tattoos. Or perhaps you would prefer the company of a great stone speaker. But it reverts back to the man you saw before. I simply find this comfortable for this event.
How do you come to know these forms? Do you base it on the people you meet, or is it personal in any way?
I cannot create the visage of a person. I cannot summon something from nothing. All these people have existed or will exist.
Does the persona you adopt influence you at all?
Yes. Much like the shoes you wear influence you, even if you don't know it.
We all have favorite pairs of shoes.
This is a good walking pair. Something fit for parties. He's eaten a lot actually at this point in time. Like while you're like pausing and thinking of questions, like he's just like very like consistently eating food. It's not like he's like engorging. It's not like Uba or Kojin eats where it's just like I don't know. It's like just so like he's like constantly chewing when he's not speaking, to the point where like he's had more than his fill several times over. And you all start to get the sense that if you are going to ask him something, you probably each have one question before he does.
Kella does not ask a further question because it would disrupt her belief that they will meet again for her to ask the questions next.
I was going to say the exact same thing for Medea.
I think that Uba, the only thing that they can kind of muster up is waving Meryl over and basically asking Meryl to like wrap up some meats for this person because they're like, I don't know what all this thread nonsense is, but this person is clearly some sort of divine being, and I'm not going to piss them off. So this is the best I can do.
Hey, you look like a god. Do you want snacks?
Solverin looks over to Alvaron.
I was like,
And-
nope, I'm not touching this one.
I think if that's the case, Uba will kind of like put their hands together and they kind of rub their eyes like this is like a lot of information for them to take in. And they say, so you mentioned a missive. I still don't think we've actually asked why you've stopped by to talk to us.
Solverin holds up like a finger and says, very gravely, I do have the one question. Have you enjoyed your meal?
Yes. Yes, I have. Mariveth also kind of like sheepishly raises his left hand, or where the left hand would be. When you see, if you may, my thread, is it frayed? Being thinks for a minute. No, no, of course not. And Mariveth lowers the hand. Nods. And I think with that, they will begin to stand. And they say to Uba first with a sweeping bow, "Thank you for your hospitality, for obeying all the rules in which it entails. I take my leave of you with these words. Okay. I'm going to put this in the chat as I read it out. 1. Deep beneath the sea, restless bee. A servant schemes, wrapped in weeds." There's a notable distinct pause. 1. Sits high in court, the palest sort. The blood of blue his feeding doth rue. Pause. 1. Vengeful watches from plains below, thrice thwarted, thrice damned, against them stand. A hint from the universe as to your future. I thank you once again, and a third time. Thank all of you. And he begins to kind of. You've seen this done, or some of you might have seen this done before, or understand. He's backing up like one might disengage from like a king or an emperor. Like he doesn't feel like he's showing deference to you by not turning his back until he is at the door, at which point he ends his bow, turns around, and with a peal of thunder and a flash of lightning is gone from your presence.
That was dramatic.
I think Uba just chugs like a whole glass of wine.
Solverin reaches past Uba to collect the wine barrel, and bring it over as well.
Keller
Medea.
is furiously writing down everything in her spellbook.
Medea takes a moment and takes another bite and then says, Silver, and I get the idea that, or any of you really, if you try and contact the ones who you worship, they're more likely to answer if it's questions about them. If there was ever a time to ask, I think this is a...
Keller
They may
is
waited.
Keller is noticeably absent of all religious paraphernalia of any kind. No gods would let a child be locked in the astral sea for 10 years.
So, over on, if you wish to contact Similis, Silver and especially Sil, I think, would be more likely to answer. Though I know they are not primary object of worship.
Solverin looks at Medea, nods slightly, but there's no declaration in that. It's just a short nod before he continues his long, slow drink. And then very pointedly to Maraveth says, "A meeting of 6, and he made the 7th.
Maraveth kind of nods. Suppose perhaps it is good that I came after all. Or maybe it is ill. Maybe he would not have shown otherwise.
What if the 6th was Kojin and Maraveth the 5th, and I am the one not meant to be here, for I was not part of a promise?
They kind of think.
I mean, I'm gonna follow you all, but it's important to think of these possibilities.
Solverin, seeing that Maraveth kind of started saying something, but then didn't, interjects mildly. The will of the master is the will of the apprentice. Is it not, Maraveth?
Keller laughs at something esoteric and odd.
Yeah, Maraveth is like, I think he's just staring like down at his stump.
Um, I should probably go. And they pick up their sending stone really quick, and they're like, I am getting a message. I should be back in a moment. And they head off for a second. They're like, I've been away for more than an hour or two, so they like awkwardly shuffle away, and they're like, Uba, where's the back?
I think Uba like summons a servant to like help you find where you need to go, and then turn to all of you and say, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't expecting to be visited by some sort of divine being. I was hoping that we could just enjoy delicious food and discussion, but seems like perhaps we may need to spend more time together than we expected. If any of you need to stay the night, there are rooms available. I'm not sure if I would be able to figure out this cryptic riddle on my own.
I
Andrew,
confess.
where did you... Go, you can go. I was making sure I found it.
All right. I confess that I believe I would have found a visit by a divine being somewhat less jarring.
Keller says, I'll take somewhere to stay. Will's going to be very jealous. And she kind of absently looks down at where the cat has absconded to, and it's like batting around this little bead of light on the ground. And she is out of her chair quicker than probably most of you have ever seen a person in a full dress just move. And she's trying to grab it off the cat before the cat accidentally activates it. Because I don't want to do damage to Uber's castle.
Uba would be very upset.
I think I'll let you guys kind of decide whether you're going to stay here or not as you go and maybe converse with other people, think about what you just witnessed. We close in on this first session hack. Thank you all for playing. Thanks everybody who was watching. I'm excited to get back into the game and see what happens from here. I think that's where we're going to leave you. Bye-bye, y'all.